Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And before I introduce my guest for the fifth time, it's 5 times, everybody, 5 times. And we're supposed to do this with another guest, but society didn't want it to go this way, and destiny is not befading us. But I do have links up above. So I have my guest's link and his current Kickstarter that's out there that's fully funded, I believe. And then there's also a link for me to buy me a coffee, so feel free to go do that. But more importantly than checking out both of those links, please share the links around. Please share this podcast. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Ruben, for a fifth time.
Hey,
Fifth
fifth
time.
time. I'm about to be the Michael Jordan of the podcast, man. You know, we're gonna go six. We're gonna go six. We're gonna go six.
There's a few people who are hot on your tail on that one.
Uh,
There's a few people. There's about, I think, 3 or 4 people who are hot on your tail. But obviously, I sort of tip my hat, and I don't feel like going through the entire pleasantries because you have a Kickstarter, and it's for The Illusion Witch. Obviously, book 2, issue 2. I think it's 6 issues, sort of a mini series. And so let's kind of dive into a little bit of what the Kickstarter is and the basic story is for those who missed issue 1 and all that stuff.
well, if you missed issue one, shame on you. But more importantly, the Illusion Witch is a story about a world-renowned famous illusionist who gets pulled into a world of real fantasy and magic. And on the top layer, that sounds like like your basic fantasy magic, sword and wand type of story, but with the Illusion Witch, it is not what it seems. There's a deeper story there. There's a story about a flawed character who has experienced severe trauma. So she is very cut off from the world, very cut off from her emotions. And all of a sudden she is thrust into the responsibility of saving a whole world that she didn't even know existed. And through that journey, she's going to learn about herself. She's going to touch base and heal the wounds from her trauma, and hopefully become the hero that Sarai needs.
Yeah, let's dive into this because obviously diving into, I think it's Idea Lock. I
Adia,
think
Adia Locke.
Idea Lock. I'm trying here. This is a tough name. It's a tough name. So you had to pick a tough name for me. So
I
this is
wanted to
how
be
comfortable
unique.
we
I
are.
wanted to I wanted to be unique.
And so obviously she is dealing, in all seriousness, she lost her kid. Obviously that sort of broke off her marriage. And she is beyond talented as an illusionist. And a lot of people have sort of left her life. She trusts very few people. She obviously doesn't know how to have relationships. And so what is this like building her character? Because obviously she seems not to, for lack of a better word, not give a fuck about anybody and sort of want to be disconnected and very cold and almost protective of her emotions and almost put up like a layer because once you're hurt, you don't want to be re-hurt again.
Right, right. And there's no hurt like loss. So for Adia, she's experienced a lot of it. So when it comes to connecting with people and establishing relationships after this trauma or after those traumas, it became a non-starter for her. So building her up, I knew that number one, she was not going to be very likable, and a lot of people would say that's dangerous. A lot of people would say, "Oh, you want your characters to be liked right from the beginning," and so on and so forth. But for me, I felt like there's precedent. There's anti-heroes. Who we grow to love. So why not have a person who is maybe cold and distant and disconnected and uses people as plug and play accessories in her life, and why not show her journey, why not show her growth, right? Because I think if we can all relate to anything that's going on in the Illusion Witch, it's that outside traumas, outside experiences do shape who we become, right? And if we allow the negative to kind of have its way with us, then we are probably in turn going to be negative. So Adia right now is at a point in her life where it is just all negative. She doesn't see anything but her career and her paycheck. So it's all just surface level. There's no real relationships there for anybody to really care for. And although her ex-husband still continues to reach out and tries to have that connection, she uses the way that she feels and her experiences to cut him off. So again, just somebody who needs to grow emotionally and spiritually so that they can be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and then even obviously to dive into this because this is where she is in issue one.
Hmm.
And she is very cold and she's very disconnected. And then sort of in issue two, and I don't think I'm ruining anything too major at this point. Basically a Baru, who is a, I'm probably gonna get this creature wrong because it's again, this is like the worst, like the word game is bad today for me.
For
Um,
all intents and purposes, he's a Badger. If you ask my letterist, Mike Lentz, he's gonna kill me for that. I said Mike Tenner, Mike Lentz, Dave Lentz. Jesus Christ, it's a long day. Um, Dave Lentz is my Dave Lentz is my letterer. If you ask him, it's a Badger. So you can call it a Badger. It's okay.
it's pretty much Barry the Badger who can travel through space and time and comes from this world that is actually real magic. And this Badger sort of appears and transports Adia into this world. And this is sort of what is this like? So this is where issue two sort of takes place, is that she is completely disconnected from the real world. She
Right.
is a beyond talented magician, and then you throw a disconnected magician, illusionist into a world that has real magic in it. And obviously, she's not happy to be there.
Correct. In issue two, issue two is a little bit of like a back and forth game, so to speak. Like you'll get a little bit of the backstory on Sarai and why this world needs Adia. You won't get all the answers, but you'll kind of find out exactly where the starting point was, where Adia would be needed, right? And then on the flip side of that, we kind of pick up where we left off in issue one with Adia opening her dressing room door to Baru and having this animal speak to her, telling her that she needs to come with him. So there's going to be some funny moments, and then there's going to be some deep moments in terms of going back into the flashbacks of Sarai and seeing where the three came from. Our main villains. That's going to be pretty cool. Andrea Erico, my artist, he's done a really great job at kind of depicting those moments in the script and really being able to play with kind of like the shadows and the blood the way that I wanted to. So it's all, I'm saying too much, but there's a lot of stuff that's in the book that's going to be a lot of fun. And I would say issue two is just really like the very shallow end of the pool. It's like right when you walk in on that first step. So, issue two is going to put you ankle deep in Sarai, and as we go forward, we'll trudge through the water together, and we'll get deeper and deeper into Sarai and Adia's journey.
And one of the things that I sort of like is that, well, they wake up in Sarai, and pretty much we have this crazy scenario where a dragon type creature sort of is going after the two of them, and Adia sort of, who's a magician, may or may not have some powers that sort of awaken to some degree. And it's this crazy moment because, well, in the real world, she's an illusionist. So she has the attitude that she enjoys fooling people. And now, well, you get that entire situation. And that's what makes this super interesting beyond just the regular magic story where it's not, her illusions are now not illusions anymore. And then obviously she's figuring out what the hell's going on. She has a badger talking to her. She is fighting this idea of becoming a hero. And these are all complicated issues. And then you have a gigantic dragon sort of wanting to kill you that may or may not look like a lobster at some certain panels. So it's a crazy scenario because while some of this is funny, there is a lot of dark shit going on in this.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, it has some emotional weight to it. It's got some levity, in terms of the topics that I'm talking about. Death is not an easy thing to process. It's a tough situation. I know for me, my experience, losing my mom, losing my grandmother, these are things that that kind of like shaped my psyche in a really weird way in terms of like how I view life. And I was lucky enough to where I had a great group of people around me. You know, my family loved me. I had great friends. I've got a great partner. Um, you know, so I wasn't able to go. You know, I had my moments. Don't get me wrong. You know, where it felt like that darkness was never gonna let up. You know, like I wasn't gonna see the light. But again, it's the choices that we make as human beings. And Adia has chosen to close herself off. So, in that situation where our Werven, our dragon, is coming after her. How that ends and where that will take us. I'm not going to say. I will say that there is somebody coming that we're going to meet at the end of issue 2 that I have a lot of love for as a character, and I have a lot of great plans for him as a character as well, and that's Orion, which is Kelvin's son, and but when how and when he comes, you'll just have to pick up issue 2 and find out. But
then
yeah.
obviously, I want to table a little bit of Adia at the moment, and I do want to talk
Hmm.
about Sorry as a whole world because
Hmm.
it is a crazy world, and world building is a very interesting thing in indie comics right now, where there are people who know how to build worlds, there are people who know how to build characters, and there are and Sorry is a fascinating world where it's very bright and it's got a very interesting color palette. And there's mountains, and you can sort of feel the grass, and it almost seems like Hawaii in a lot of ways. And then, but you also have islands floating in the sky. It's got like also a DBZ feel to it in a lot of ways. And then there's obviously magic, and there's dragons, and there's other creatures in there. And what was that like? Because it's most of the story I feel is going to take place in Sorry. Obviously, issue 1 takes place in the real world. I have a feeling the rest of the book, until the resolution that she achieves in issue 6, takes place, and then she'll probably return back to her world. I'm maybe not, but
Maybe not.
I think
um
it's a safe bet that a lot of the book's going to take place in this world. And so, what
Correct.
was that like? Because obviously there has to be rules, introducing the magic, balancing it, keeping the world, somewhat fantasy, but you don't want it to be too dark fantasy. And because if you build it like her character and the way she's feeling, it's not going to be balanced because the world is very much sort of like, I'm going to use an analogy. It's sort of like the yin and yang symbol. If everybody's imagining the
Hmm.
world is the white side and well, she's the black side.
Hmm.
And that's how I view it in the most way I can describe it.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, we're definitely gonna go back and forth. Between issue 1 and 2, we see a little bit of Sarai. From going from that moment on, from the end of issue 2, we are, like I said, trudging through Sarai. That's why I even had a map created of the world. So going forward, you guys, as readers and fans, hopefully, you can kind of take a look at that map and say, okay, I know where they are, I know where they got to go, what the situation is, so that we can go on that journey together. So yeah, we're definitely going to get deeper and deeper into Sarai. It's funny because Sarai actually belongs to another story that I was writing. That for a moment, my brother was like egging me on to write a novel, and I started toying with the idea of writing a novel, and for that novel, I created Sarai, and then me and Casey got to working, and we started doing in Fairy, and I kind of got the bug, and I was like, man, I really need to do another series, another standalone series by myself, and how do I do that? What do I do? Where do I go? And that's a whole other story. But the illusion which came about, and I needed a fantasy world, and I was like, man, I was like, Soraya is so perfect for this. Like it lends itself to this story so well. I was like, I'm gonna use it. So I kind of, pickpocketed it from the other story, which is cool because the story that I tell in that other story can be just another point in time in Sarai. So it's interesting because my editor and friend Chris Watt says, he calls it, like jokingly around, he calls it the Romero verse, the agency, in Fairy, the illusion witch, all of that stuff. So, and in the back of my mind, like, in the forefront, I'm very humble, and I'm like, no, I'm not good enough to do something like that, right? Like I'm not Dave Filoni or one of these guys that are going to go out there, and like Mark Millar and build like this whole universe. But in the back of my mind, I think there's the Apollo, there's the Creed in me that's like looking in the mirror and like saying, yeah, you can do it. So keep doing it. So slowly but surely, I'm connecting the pieces and putting it together to where it all will be one universe, right? At least when it comes to Sarai and any stories that I tell that involve Sarai.
And so what is that like? Because obviously, as I stated, world building can be a bitch. And
Mm.
I'm very, very honest about it because, I've obviously tried to write comics and, I know how to build a character and I'm mediocre at it at that because I'm still a novice. But world building is, you can either hit it really well or it's extremely difficult setting up everything. And then obviously you're thinking even more long term and bigger with this, where is this idea where, what if you go 1500 years into the future or you go 1500 years in the past? Because obviously you need to have almost a Bible and a rule set to
Right.
build it. And it can be easy or hard depending on how you do it.
Yeah, I think the best advice that I can give to people is be prepared. Like write, have your Bibles. Focus on the world that you want to grow and that you want to build, and understand that you don't have to do everything at once. You can plant seeds that will grow, you know, years down the line. If that's what you want to do. With Sarai, I just look at it as a one story at a time. I do believe that it has a lot of potential in terms of like fantasy worlds and what I can do there and the stories that I can tell, whether it's commingling Sarai and people from the real world or just going back and telling a story, hyper focused in Sarai. Like I could go back and tell an origin story of the Circle, right? Of Baru, Kelvin, his son, Syria, the Siren, or I can go and tell the story of the Floating Islands, which was the novel that I was going to write that involves Sarai. So it's really about how much time you want to invest, right, in it, and obviously be prepared. Write it down and never be afraid to change things up. Nothing's concrete. What I think today is what Sarai looks like today might look different 5 years from now. So you know it's right now it's all about Adia's journey through Sarai and how that affects her.
And then obviously getting into her journey more, and we're going to talk about this because this is super interesting, is the three. And
Mm.
obviously, it's a very interesting character. There's a lot of history that we find out. And I know that it went through some character designs, and I think that something happened with book one with it and got somewhat redesigned, or another piece of art or another interpretation got introduced. And I know you did like a 3D photo of it, I think on Facebook a while back as well. And so what is that like? Because obviously, I don't think in the first issue, I don't remember if the three was introduced, or it might have been introduced briefly.
Hmm.
But obviously, I think there was a cover. Did Stan Yak do that?
He did. He did. He was actually the first one to draw the three. So, the design for the book came from Stanyak's mind and my notes that I gave him and what I was looking for. And then we kind of went back to the beginning, with Andrea, with the artist, and said, okay, fluid motion and the way that this thing moves, and in time, it has evolved, right? Like the shape and the things that it's able to do.
So, so,
Because
so
again,
what is that like to be open to that? Because obviously, sometimes in comics, the idea is that you got to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
right, right. Well, I mean, excuse me. Um, it's good and bad because you have an image in your head, right? And then you kind of get something from somebody like Staniak, and you're like, oh man, that changes my whole outlook on it, right? Like now I can picture it, this way. And then you have somebody like Andrea Erico, who's a different type of artist who brings something different to the design inside the book. So but again, how does it evolve? Why did it get there? So it's all of these things that come together and you say, okay, this is the character, right? It went through a metamorphosis. It changes it within itself. So again, there's just that little bit of give and go and being able to say, okay, I'm not looking for the same exact thing all the time because I want this character to be different, right? Like again, the three, there's a reason why they call it the three, right? Because it's not one entity, it's actually three brothers who have come together, right? Um, for you know a reason.
And then
Um,
also to even go further, because one of the cool things about comics is that, and we're starting to see it a lot. I mean, I'm having CB Zane on tomorrow, and he has a lot of covers of,
right,
of like the same thing, but it's all
right,
interpreted differently and in different styles. And that's the other cool thing about comics is that you could legitimately have Stan Yak do his version of the three. Andrea could do his version, and then you
right.
get another artist do their version, and then you could have like four variants of it. And obviously, you could have a lot of fun with that, where obviously everybody has a different interpretation. And so, obviously, nothing is ultra concrete, and well, we are in a magic fantasy, which also helps a lot, which gives a lot of leeway into it. So, so you've created a universe, and I guess it's in your Bible that the three technically doesn't have to stay the same all the
Right.
time.
I mean, there's a certain look that I wanted to have, right? Because it embodies the three brothers. There's a level of detail that if you're sharp eyed, when you see the three brothers in their human form, and then you see the three brothers as that unified wraith, you can kind of pick out who's who, right? So there's all that stuff, and Andrea's brought that right to that character in terms of, so there is that consistency of Andrea, right? But there is going to be a difference too. Like I remember one of the things I somebody told me was, oh, I the variant cover differs from the design inside the book, and I said, not totally. You're just looking at two different artists' versions of it, right? So on a cover, an artist has a little bit more room. They're not confined by panels. And Stan Yak is very dynamic. He's very cinematic, so to speak. And Andrea is very storyboard like in the way that his art flows, and you don't need the words. You can actually tell what's happening. The emotion is there in the face. And again, this thing is moving around. So and on the cover, it's in one pose. If it's crawling through a skylight and appearing in front of Kelvin and moving kind of like, a shadow or a snake, like this fluid motion that I picture it as, then it's gonna vary. You know what I'm saying? So again, there's Andrea is a very consistent artist. Don't get me wrong. Like every panel is you can tell who's who and what characters are what. But with the three, there's a very specific notion that again there are three people in there who are vying for power, right? Who are looking to be the head, so to speak. So there's that dynamic as well. So again, it's going to be a fun thing to play with, and you're going to see a lot of different versions of how that character looks, but only because again it's character driven.
And then also with this, I mean, we're finding out why they're this way, what
Mm-hmm.
happened, what sort of took place, what they're interested in, and that's what we're getting in issue two. Because obviously, we're going to get that showdown between Adia and the three, and they're going to sort of either they're going to come together, maybe they want the same thing, maybe they don't want the same thing, maybe they want half the same thing, and obviously, but they're coming together. I think it's safe to say that, forces of power tend to clash with each other, whether they clash together to form something new or something else, or, maybe she has something they want. If there are three people, I mean, it's just a possibility that maybe something put them together and all three of them want out. And maybe, if she gets what they want and she saves the world, she could divide all three of them. Or maybe they want to be united, or maybe, they want to be four people for all we know. So, I'm just saying that a lot of stuff can happen, but we're finding out a lot of history of how this came about. And
Yeah.
obviously, we're not finding that history as a dead end story.
Right, right. It's a flashback with purposes to move you forward, right? Like I always love that about Lost, where they would, you'd be on the island and you'd be focusing on Jack, and then all of a sudden he'd look off, down to the beach, and it would flash back to him and his dad in a boardroom meeting, and it's like those parallels, right? That like whatever he's going through on the island was significant to what they were showing us with the flashback. So with this, it's the kind of like the same thing in terms of like what's happening in Sarai is only because of the things that happened in Sarai, right? So, for every thing that happens, there's a reaction, right? For every cause, there's a reaction, or whatever the saying is. Um, so storytelling wise, I knew that I didn't want to give that to you just an exposition, right? Like I didn't want it to be, talking heads and it being like, oh, this is what happened and this is why you're here. So you get a little bit of that, right? And Adia does a good job in issue 3 and 4 of kind of diving into a little bit more of it. But I knew I wanted to show it to everybody. I wanted you guys to see where this world was coming from and how what the situation was that it required Adia to be there. So it was fun working on issue 2 because it's like I said, it's a little bit of both. It's 50-50. It's linear and it's 50% linear, 50% flashback.
I'll give an analogy, and you could disagree with it if I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong. The way what I read about issue 2 and what I've seen a little bit of issue 2, issue 1 is the start of it, and issue 2 is cocking the hammer. Because issue 3 and 4 are going to be, going hard, and even into issue 5, we're sort of shooting the bolt down chamber, I think is a good way to put it as the analogy, because we got to set almost the dinner table before we serve dinner, is another way to look at it.
Right,
So,
right.
I don't want to
I gotta
push
set the plates. I gotta set the plates for you guys to, get ready, sit down, take your seats, get comfy, and then I'm gonna take you on a ride. And you mentioned 6 issues. Well, that might change because I've been the book's been picked up. It's got a publishing deal. That's all I will say about that. So you can't dig any deeper on
So,
that.
I do want to talk about this though, because it's not digging deeper. Because Mike Tiener, and Mike Tiener,
Yeah.
obviously he just took Black Jackets from 6 issues to 8,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously right now this is still an indie book. I think it's safe to say that. And so, what is that like as far as indie books and expanding? Because I mean, there's some people. Edward Davis obviously wants to do a 30-issue indie book, and it's a lot doing long indie books. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's not going to be 30 issues, that's for sure. But I think with having the publishing deal behind me with the company that that picked up the book, I have a lot of faith in them. And I think that this book deserves to breathe. This story deserves to breathe. And I don't want to just shoot you through the barrel. I want you to feel it. I want you to, cry. I want you to laugh. I want you to get mad. And the only way I can do that is if I have the room to do so. So the book is already, 22 pages. So if I get 2 more issues or 3 more issues out of this story that allows me to kind of take you through the layers of Adia Locke and how she learns to be the best person, best version of herself. I think it's only going to service, the story, and it's going to make you, the reader, a lot happier. I think that, I made that decision because I got the deal. I said, you know what, now I know that it's going to see the light of day and it's going to see, worldwide distribution. So that kind of situation, I was just like, okay, that solidified it for me, because I was already toying with the idea. But like you mentioned, it's hard because you have to go to Kickstarter, you got to go through those stresses, you got to pony up the dough first. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of work.
To even go further into it, one of the things that's happening, and I'm sure you've seen it, is that, so I come from 2 worlds. I come from the wrestling world, where everybody on the indie wrestling scene is getting signed to AEW or WWE, and a lot of comic people are now getting signed and picked up, and it's happening. And the people that are on Kickstarter, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of colorists that I'm like, oh man, they worked on this book and now they're getting signed. Or there's a bunch of people who are doing variants and they're getting picked up, and it's like, when did this happen, right? I mean, I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's
Oh
coming.
well, I mean, one of Alex Monic, who does the exclusive prints for the Illusion Witch Kickstarter. So the first one was Adia Locke. The second one, this one for this Kickstarter campaign is Orion. She's got a job at Dark Horse. You know, she's a wonderful cover artist. She's amazing. By the end of the Illusion Witch, she will have she will have her own main cover. Um, but for right now, she's doing like these exclusive art pieces that are collectible to just the Kickstarter. So that's somebody who is close, you know, to me, that in my circle, so to speak, that I've worked with, that I've seen get picked up. There's a couple other creators out there. I won't drop any names, that I know have, you know, deals in the works, that are, you know, done, that they just have to make the announcements just as I do. So again, it's just one of those things where I think we're starting to see a new generation of comic book creators who are coming from that Kickstarter world, and that indie comic circuit, that are finally getting their just due. And you know, sky's the limit, man. You know, at the end of the day, I know that with this situation, I'm going to use it to my full advantage, and I'm going to work hard to deliver a great book. Hopefully, you know, get some attention from it, and be able to build my resume, so to speak, so that I can go and maybe get another book picked up somewhere else, or write for, you know, a major two, or maybe even get into a writer's room. You know, at the end of the day, it's just all about writing and creating for me. So having this accolade happen to me, especially with this book, it means the world to me. Like I can't believe it, because I knew that I wanted to spread this story, and share it with the world, and now I'm going to have an opportunity to do so. So it's all blessings, and I'm going to just use it to my full advantage and work really hard to give you guys the best of me.
And then obviously I don't want to push too hard into this because I don't want to break the ice per se because we're walking on dangerous territory and I know a bunch of stuff. And obviously I'm in on the other side of this trade because I'm on the comic book investing side, and obviously the entire Kickstarter stuff, I'm still figuring it out, and a bunch of people like me in the comic book world are actually figuring out what the hell to do with it because it is brand new and it's maybe 2 3 years new on the investing side, and it is super tricky. So I'm not the person to talk about that per se because it's still being worked out. But obviously I want to talk about the rewards because I think that's what a lot of people want to know about. Obviously there's a bunch of stuff going on. So first and foremost, we always start with digital. Obviously, you could get just a basic digital copy. It's cheaper, delivered right to your email, and it's pretty basic. And if you're a digital reader, that's something that's out there. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You could also catch up digitally with issues 1 and 2. And that's something that I actually like about your Kickstarter is that one of the things that I hate about Kickstarter is when there's not a catch-up issue. Because sometimes in life, you know, people miss things for a lot of reasons. You know, there's a lot of books that come out on Kickstarter every month, and there's a lot of good products that are coming out. And sometimes people have to make choices, and sometimes also people are in economic strain some months, and things happen. And so it's kind of nice. So I like the fact that you offer a catch up on the digital side for people who want to read it. And I think it's super important. So on the digital side at the very least. And also, you know, shipping shit is hard.
Yeah, and you know, it's time consuming, but it's one of those things where I want to do it, as much as possible. If I can give you guys, you know, a digital catch up, why not? You know, at the end of the day, it's just more eyes on the prize, so to speak. So definitely, and that's something that I learned from Russell Notley. One of the major keys I've seen him post is you got to give people a chance to catch up with your stuff. So that to me is, you know, that's a no-brainer. You know, and then we go into the physical books. Like I mentioned, we've got exclusive art pieces that I'm not going to take them to conventions. I'm not going to sell them on a website. Like, they're going to be only for the Kickstarters. And yes, they will be available for, you know, if I have, you know, left over or whatever, I'll bring them over. But yeah, those Alex Monic pieces are going to be exclusive to the Kickstarter, so to speak.
So let's talk about some of this stuff. So obviously, I want to show book one. I think this is. I actually don't even know if I have book one. on here, which is really bad. But I might. I think this is book
There
one.
you
I do
go.
have book one. So
There you
obviously
go.
this is the cover A for book one
Hmm.
that came out. So obviously I don't even know what's in my loaded up my all my images. And so that's book one. And
Hmm.
then obviously there's a bunch of covers. And I'm sure you know these better than I do.
Right.
So I do want to show this. So there's this one, which
So
is
that's
that
cover,
dragon.
yeah, that's cover A for issue two.
And then I
That's
think I
done.
think Andrea did that cover
Correct.
because usually the interior artist does the cover A.
Hmm.
And so I like this cover, and it's the dragon, and obviously it's sort of telling. Where who knows? Maybe the dragon's our friend.
Who knows? We'll see.
We could all be singing "Puff the Magic Dragon," right?
Yes, and he's definitely not Puff the Magic Dragon.
I'm gonna get both of us in trouble. That's the goal here.
There we go.
And then obviously this is another cover, and so I think this is also telling of possibly an ally.
Right. That's Kelvin, the father. He is that cover was done by Neon Pen. The very elusive Neon Pen. Nobody knows what he looks like. But he did a wonderful job. I don't care what he looks like. He can wear that red suit, bodysuit whenever he wants. That doesn't bother me. And he was a lot of fun to work with. He was very excited about it, and he kind of relished in the opportunity to do so. So I was really happy I was able to get him, and he kind of killed it, man. Like I really like this whole shirtless Kelvin thing. I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about it, but the more I looked at it, I was just like, man, this just looks so like epic. I was like, this is like what I'm looking for, like just this level of epicness. And he did a great job. He did a great job coloring it, lighting it. Like I just think he's a lot of fun to work with, and he's got
And
a
there's this
great
one.
talent. And my boy JC Fabal, he brought the thunder there with and the sexiness, and putting Adia on the throne there, on that dragon throne. Yeah, man, I knew, nude covers, they got a lot of hype on Kickstarter. That's not my bag, so to speak. There's tatas everywhere in the world. If you want to see tatas, you can Google tatas. I also have a lot of just it sounds silly, but respect and admiration. So I think there's power in sexiness. And I think that, I told JC Football, I told him, I was like, listen, I want it to be sexy and like on the edge of just like that. Oh man, like, is that going to be a nude cover? And I think he brought it. I love the way he positioned her feet, and just the little play of like her fingers there, where PH, my colorist, was able to kind of like include a little magic there for the candles. He really killed it. He really did.
And so to even talk about that, because
Mhm.
obviously to talk about the new cover stuff,
Hmm.
obviously I don't mind nude covers. I'm a big Zenescope fan, and a lot of people
Yeah.
know that. But I don't buy nude covers, and the only reason why is that from a comic book investing standpoint, they are harder to sell on eBay. Because they are in an adult area on eBay. There's just less of an audience. They also tend to be more expensive, and therefore, when you keep raising the price on a nude cover, and 100 print run nude cover at Zenscope is $100,
Yeah.
versus a $20 book. There's a bigger market for a cheaper product. Just genuinely, the bar and the threshold for a $20 book is definitely easier to sell than a $100 book. So obviously, I personally view it that I think that new covers are fine, but I also think that a lot of people have done it and it's lost its merit in a lot of ways. And also, I feel like this book doesn't make sense with a nude cover as well, and you have to be sort of true to your book as well.
Yeah.
And that's not saying Adia Locke isn't sexy. I mean, she's an attractive, illusionist, but like I feel like the nude cover would detract away, and you need to know your book. And I think that that's a big problem right now in Kickstarter with a lot of people on nude covers is that their nude covers don't make sense.
I think, like, to echo that sentiment. I see a lot of, like, I'm in a lot of comic book groups, and I see a lot of creators asking the question, should I do a new cover? If you have to ask yourself, maybe you shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless you're confident enough. Like, I remember with Mike Tenner and Dead End Moon, you know, we talked about the nude covers. and you know he did that book with his fiance or his wife, you know. So it's one of those things where like there has to be, is the character that kind of character? And you know, to me, Mike was like she, you know, the character in Dead and Moon is definitely the type to go out bareback, you know, you know, no, you know, excuse the pun, so to speak, but you know, no saddle and no clothes, like, and she'll go out riding in the middle of a field. If that's that character, cool, no problem, you know. But again, you know, it is what it is. Like it's just a pair of breasts, you know, on a female character. That's all it is. That's all we're showing people. So does it, you know, there's a very niche audience for that, and I respect that audience, and I respect all the creators who put nude covers out there. That's cool, no problem. I'm, you know, I'm just not that person. Like I thought about it, I toyed with the idea, but again, I ended up asking myself, if I really got to think about it this much, is it something
Yeah.
that I want to do? Is it something that my character would do? And it's not saying that Adio wouldn't get naked. You know, we're all real people. We all get naked. But again, it's just not something that interests me. I don't think it's needed in the book. It's not going to add a layer of, you know, character depth if you get to see her naked. You know what I'm saying?
Also,
So
also, I feel that a lot of this nude stuff is just a cheaper, faster way how to add another tier in a lot of ways. And not to bash anybody's Kickstarter, but you know, a nude cover, it becomes a $50 book versus a $20 book. And I understand that people are saying, "Hey, how do I?" You know, people want this stuff, people enjoy it, and you know, the cost to produce a nude book isn't that much more as far as an art thing, and it might get your Kickstarter funded. But at the same time, it raises the question where there's a challenge the integrity of the property.
right,
And obviously, you know, it's a risk. And if your character does it, like Zenoscope really is, they didn't invent this, but I think they're probably the most famous for this. Their characters are like that in the nude. But then again, they have covers that are nude covers that make 100% sense. A
right,
hundred percent sense, and then they have nude covers that make no sense. And it's not that they legitimately took, you know, I'm not gonna say what cover it is, but girls standing with clothes outside the Eiffel Tower, and then they have the exact same cover of her topless, and
right.
that cover doesn't make any sense in
It's
a
like
lot
me
of.
taking cover A of this book and having Adia there in front of the dragon with a shirt on, and then the nude version is her without the shirt. Like, what's the point of that? Like, what is that doing? So for me, it's just like it is what it is. You know, I knew I wanted to do something sexy, and I'll continue to bring the sexy, so to speak, when it comes to Adia. Even in issue one, there's, you know, there's a whole scene with her and, you know, a female you know, lover, if you will, so to speak. So there are things there. You know, I'm an adult. I know how to handle adult situations. But there's, you know, but there's for me there was no need for it. You know, but again, I don't have a. You know, you want to do it, you do it. I
Yeah,
think that you know, if it adds more money to your campaign, you know, it's all, I'm all for it.
look, I'm
You
not
know,
in
I
a
wish people
position.
nothing but success, man. I just don't. You know, again, it's one of
I'm
those non things
I'm
that
not in a
I don't talk a
position.
lot about.
So I'm not in a position to criticize anybody's Kickstarter. I never ran a Kickstarter. If it comes off that way, it's not meant to. But I'm observing and seeing what's out on the market because obviously I speak to a lot of creators and I find it such an interesting situation that's going on with it. And when people go nude, when they don't go nude, and a variety of stuff. And I think it comes down to, you know, a, what you are comfortable as a creator and what your book is meant to do, and also the audience you're trying to hit. And you know, I mean, I'm down for whatever gets you across the line and what you feel your audience wants. Because I mean, if you got 500 requests for nude covers, clearly your audience would want it. And whether you give it to your audience or not is not the issue. But I don't want a nude cover with your book. No offense,
Right,
it doesn't make any sense to me. But if I'm buying, you know, Midnight Moon, maybe I do want that nude cover. If I'm buying, you know, a Carisi, you know, maybe I do want a new cover because that might make sense to what that book is. And then
right.
obviously there is this cover too, which is fun. You know, it reminds me of the Spider-Man 25 book that just came out with that fun with the cats. I don't know if you've seen that cover.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Yeah, I
reminds me of
wanted,
the.
you know, I wanted to do like you know, like a Scotty Young, you know, kind of like just fun, playful, you know, almost animation cartoon kind of feel to it. And my, you know, Dave Lentz, the letterer, He actually, he also draws. He's very talented in every way. And then he went and brought in Kit Wallace to color it. So they brought it. I gave him a premise, an idea. He actually added the three back there. I didn't have that in my original idea, but we thought it was really funny that he was just like, with his tongue out, looking at that big ham hock. And it kind of alludes to everything that we've been seeing with the dragon and his introduction, and where and what we might be doing. But yeah, there's four different covers. I also have a stretch goal for Bruno Oliveira, who is a Marvel artist. He did several books in the Spider-Man universe for Marvel, interior pages as well as covers. So it's a lot of fun. I love covers. I think if anything with Kickstarter, like that's the fun. Is you can do a bunch of covers. Good Boy just massively killed Kickstarter. And they have a bunch of fun covers for that. And it's not only a fun premise of the book, it's like a reverse John Wick with a dog, but you also can play with that world and then that kind of stuff. So they're actually doing sketch covers here in their last 48 hours. So if you guys haven't backed that, go look up Good Boy, because that is a great Kickstarter. But yeah, man, it's the covers are fun. Comic books are the one book that I do judge by their cover. It's how I get into my new series. It's how I pick my books. If I see a cover on the rack, I will open up my book and I like it. I will open up my phone, Google it, look at the description, read the description, be like, oh, that sounds like a cool book, and it's happened. In the last year in the pandemic, I've gotten into so many indie books because of the covers. And same thing on Kickstarter. There's a lot of guys I back because they're not only does their premise sound good, but their cover looks really cool. So again, it's kind
So,
of
so
like, a
to
good way to
talk
get
about
people hooked
that.
in.
So I'm curious because I backed Kickstarters and I didn't care about the Kickstarter, but I cared about the cover. And I know that sounds like the worst thing in the world. And I interviewed the person and I told him straight up, I said, dude, like I just looked at your covers. Where I saw your thing, you sort of messaged me, I looked at it, and it was crazy. I think I pronounced that right. It's Isaac Fox, I want to say, and his
Hmm.
project. And he had a Trigun homage cover. So now
Right.
you have this awesome cover, and the book was good. I enjoyed the book, but the cover was phenomenal. And
Yeah.
it's this idea that I'm like, how is this even doable with certain covers? I'm sure
Right.
you've had that too. And I'm trying to think of somebody's cover that I can't. That's not coming off the top of my head. And you're like, who the hell's this person anyway? I'm sure. I'm blanking on a name, but there's somebody's cover just came off and
Right.
it's brilliant. I didn't know who Steph Wilson was until Chuck Pino did Bilal. Okay,
Right.
that's a good example of it.
Right.
So obviously that changes the game. And so I'm curious because we're going to back out of Kickstarter for a second here. But what makes a good cover for you? Because obviously you booked four of them.
Right.
And I have things that stand out to me, but I am curious as both somebody who's running a bunch of Kickstarters as well as somebody who's a comic collector and backs a bunch of Kickstarters, because what you might view for your book and what you want for the Illusion Witch might not be what you buy necessarily for a different book because you're a comic collector also.
Right. I think for me, it's does the cover tell me a story? Right? Does it get my attention? Does it pull me in? And does it give me an overall feel for what I am about to, the journey I'm about to go on? There's a couple of books that I'm reading right now, like Homesick Pilots and Proctor Valley Road, that are just like their covers are phenomenal. They're interesting and they're unique. There's another book, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, that has had, it's only 3 issues in, but it's got really unique covers. Same thing for another book on Boom called Eve. They're very dynamic. So I think that when I go in my process, when I start to think about covers, not only am I thinking about homages, I'm like, oh man, let me try to do this. Like with the Bruno Oliveira cover, we landed on an Alice in Wonderland homage, right? Because again, Addie is kind of going down the rabbit hole into this new world that she's not very familiar with, a la Alice. So it just felt very fitting, right? But the way that he did it was, it was ridiculous. It was like, it incorporates every aspect of Sarai. He's got the dragons. He's got the message to Adia to look inside herself. He's got Baru. He's got Adia herself. Like, and it's all like this weird perspective, of her falling through this hole, but we can see all the way straight up. It's like it's bananas. It's bonkers. He killed it. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, I wanted to tell you the whole story without telling you the whole story. I wanted to make you feel, intrigued, and at the same time, even a little skeptic. Like, man, I hope whatever this, I hope that this book is as good as its cover, right? So to speak. So I look for all of those things, not only for my personal buys, but when I'm out creating, the books, the covers for my books, and I'm sitting down with the artist, or with Andrea, so to say, generally speaking, there is that's the platform, that's the base, dynamic, epic, and it needs to tell a story.
Yeah, I'm also somewhat similar, and also I just look for things that are just like, man, I've never seen anything done like that. Also,
Yeah,
where it's just like I'm looking for different too. Where I love sort of busts and characters and things that are just bizarre
right.
as well. And then I'm like, oh man, I didn't even know that could be done with art, and that what makes me stop because obviously somebody scrolling through Kickstarter sees your thing and says, hey, what's this? And covers can sell or make and break a comic. And obviously I've spoken with David Nakayama, I've spoken with Keith Garvey and a variety of other people, and well, covers matter, and they do make a big difference. And if it's hanging up, and obviously this is more mainstream, is that if you have 50 comics that come out on New Comic Book Day, and somebody comes in, that cover has to sell it, and
Yeah,
so it makes a big difference. So obviously that's important. And I even think it's more important because one of the things that I've said, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, is that the three things that are going to determine the future are, on demand, big libraries, and customization and choice.
right,
And what choice?
right.
And well, obviously variants are that customization choice component.
Right. No, definitely. And that's why I'm only going to step it up, so hopefully we'll continue on this trend where I'll at least have at least a minimal of 4 covers, for the Kickstarters. And again, with this publishing deal, it's a lot of fun because, I might get introduced to artists that I might not have had, the ability to reach, as just an indie guy, right? So now I'm at X place, right? And the book is hopefully going to do well. And I've already had discussions with, the powers that be, at the publishing company, talking about covers and things like that. So, it's covers are definitely important, man. Without them, you're not going to be able to get the audience's attention, obviously. And if you go too safe, you're bound to lose people. And if you don't take chances, or do fun things like pay homage to different things. I think the homage thing is, sometimes it's a little out of hand, but at the same time, if it calls for it, like I felt like the Alice homage was very called for. Like they resemble each other in a lot of ways. Alice herself was going through her own situations when she went into Wonderland. So again, it's just does it call for it, and can you be as creative as possible with it? And I think we achieved all of that.
And then obviously I want to back out of covers, and I do want to say that obviously you get all 4 covers in a package. I
Mm-hmm.
think you get some other stuff in a package also. Obviously you got coasters, t-shirts, hoodies, everything. I don't know if there's anything else. I know there's the Zoom meeting that you can do.
Yeah, you
And
can do
so
a meeting with me. We can, if you're a comic book indie creator or an aspiring writer or, artist or whatever the case may be, and you want to sit down, pick my brain, we can do that. Like we were talking before we got on camera, in this world, you as a podcast interviewer, and me as a writer, we're out on social media a lot. We tend to, pick up a lot of friend requests and people who we meet and, commingle with on social media. So you get a lot of questions, and a lot of the times it's like, it can be,
Overwhelming, annoying, and I feel like I'm answering every
Overwhelming. It can be
question.
a little, right. It can be a little overwhelming. So to be nice about it, I want to be able to help. I want to be as welcoming as possible. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I got a ton of time on my hands, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm knee deep. I'm knee deep in a script. I've got a 2-year-old. I've got my 9 to 5. I've got my fiance. I can't tell you where to find a printer. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't tell you how to choose a printer. Or I can't tell you where to look for an artist. Like so, and sometimes I can. So I thought that this was a good way of saying, okay, well, if you're genuinely interested in me as a creator, then invest in me and my time, and we'll talk and we'll chop it up, and I'll give you the best jewels of knowledge, and gems that have been given to me and that I've put to use. And again, we can develop a rapport and a relationship to where you're not just some random person in my inbox asking me questions.
I
And
swear to
again,
God, it was once, Ruben. It was once. I apologize profusely.
listen, we had our conversation. No, I'm just playing. No, and again, and I welcome it. Ask me. But if I, give you, like, hey, I can't talk right now, or like, hey, I don't have time to explain to you, the Kickstarter model and how you do it and how you build one. Don't be offended. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the reason that Zoom tier is there, is because if you're coming to me, it's because you obviously see something that you like. So invest in me and my time, and I will do the same for you. Not only will I deliver you an awesome product, but I will give you, like I said, the time, my time, and the best information that I can give you, and answer any questions that you might want. If you want to chop it up about writing, if you want to chop it up about Kickstarters, whatever the case may be, it's there for that. But so there's that. Yeah, like you mentioned, you nailed it on the head. You got it all: shirts, hoodies. This was the first generation hoodie. The next hoodie is actually going to have the 3 on it. So is the shirt. So the shirt will actually feature and the hoodie will feature the villain this time, in full color. So it's going to be a really cool little piece to have. And yeah, man. I mean, we are doing we're doing really well. We're actually I think about $51 over goal. We met goal yesterday. I have about 220 project followers, and usually the Kickstarter, how it goes. The first couple days they're the top, and then the middle 2 weeks are kind of just lulling by, and then the last 48 and that last week, it usually picks up, unless you're balling, unless you're doing something crazy, which again, it happens. This Kickstarter, though, that seems to be my formula, so to speak. I launch, I do really well in the first couple of days, then it kind of just evens out and plateaus, and then we start to go back up. So yeah, I mean, I'm just very grateful that it funded. I look at something like Good Boy, that's like, I think it's like at 40 grand right now, and I'm like, wow, like, it blows my mind. Like, I can't imagine doing something like that. And there's a part of me, I think, deep down inside, like confession time, that I feel like I don't even want to do that. Like, I don't want to do 40 grand, because that means that, like, the amount of work that I got to do, like, just in taxes alone, is going to be not worth it. So, I'm happy to do my little 5 to 6 to 7Ks, Kickstarters, and I'm happy to fund, and I'm happy to, be able to share this story with people. And yeah, would more money mean me being able to do more rewards, more cool things? Sure. But it's also, for me, it's about really, getting it out there, man. For me, it's just about that, is being able to tell that story to as many people as I can. And if it's 299 or it's 100, doesn't matter to me, as long as we're funding or meeting those goals, and we're able to get that out there. So I'm happy to do it. And yeah, jump on the Kickstarter, check out those rewards. And we've got, I think, 8 days. By tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. will be 7 days, so an official week will be left on the Kickstarter. And yeah, I'm excited. When the Kickstarter ends, I will make the announcement live on Facebook.
Not that anybody's going to be watching or caring, but I will make the announcement. I'll share it to my Kickstarter backers first, who picked up the book in terms of publishing, and then I'll get on Facebook and share that news after the Kickstarter ends.
So to even go further into help with Kickstarter, and I'm going to slightly undermine you, but I think it'll help in the long run as well, especially if you are going to pick up that tier. There's a lot of free information out there on Kickstarter and how to build it. It's not the complete answer. And obviously, if you reach out to somebody who's done it before, they're going to give you all the secret stuff and everything. But if you do a little homework before, and if you are going to pick up that tier, do a little homework because it's going to benefit you and it's going to be a bigger supplement. So that's a really good piece of advice. Because
do your homework. Do your homework.
Especially on certain things. But obviously printing is something that obviously you could help with, and a variety of stuff. But even just understanding the basics, and I know Tyler James has a bunch of free stuff on it, and do a little bit of that, because that'll give you a basic idea if you're even thinking about doing this. And look, Kickstarter is not the only way to do this. It's just one of the many ways how to deal with comics.
Correct.
One of the many ways. Obviously, Todd Kelly has self-funded. A variety of other people have gone through self-funding. And there are a variety of different methodologies and reasons why you would do something one way or the other. So obviously, I kind of want to just throw that out there. But even if you are interested in self-funding, a lot of the same stuff with printing and distribution and all that stuff can be so helpful, because it's all the same stuff. It really is.
It really is.
It's just where the money's coming from versus, because once you have the money, printing a book is, that's how it needs to be handled. Even finding an artist at the same time, it's all the same. It's just the money, is it coming out of your pocket, or do you have backers? And what is your responsibility to backers as well?
Right.
So obviously, I do want to talk now about Kickstarter. It's my favorite topic to talk about. And obviously, you've run a bunch of them. Obviously, you know a lot of people in the industry. I know a bunch of people. I know a bunch of people in the mainstream. And Kickstarter is a fascinating place as of lately.
Yeah.
And I do want to know what your thoughts are on Keanu Reeves, Scott Snyder, and where Kickstarter was in 2020 and where it is in 2021. Because I feel that in the last 15 months or so, the projects have gotten better. There's more, I guess, mainstream projects going on, and there is a lot of stuff happening. And I don't know if it's true or not, but all throughout 2020, there was more projects on Kickstarter than there is now. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how it seems. And supposedly, with 2020, more projects were getting funded. Now, I don't know if that's true either, but that's what I've heard. Right. And so what is your feel on all of that? Because
it's great stuff, man. It's great stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, how many people didn't know about Kickstarter until Keanu Reeves put a comic book on Kickstarter? So at the end of the day, it's more exposure. Do those guys need it? No, they don't. Scott Snyder can go to an Image and say, hey, I've got Nocturna, I've got A artist, I've got B colorist, I've got C letterist, and they can get it greenlit, no problem. But those guys also know the advantage of the fan, right? The power of the fan. So if they can launch a book like Berserker or Nocturna on Kickstarter and then continue on into publishing, that's not different than what I'm doing, right? I've got the Illusion Witch book 1, 2. By the time the Illusion Witch comes out in stores, right, issue number 1, I'll probably be on issue 4 or 5 of the Kickstarter.
So to go further, because obviously one of the discussions that is going on, I'm curious how you feel on this, is that people are saying, and it's actually a debate in a lot of private circles, is that what Scott Snyder and Keanu Reeves did is not the new normal, or perhaps it's the new every 3 years it's going to be what they're going to drop in, or because that's what's sort of very interesting right now, because I'm seeing a mixture of that right now on Kickstarter. I'm curious where you feel that's going, because I think it's good and bad in a lot of ways.
I mean, I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand the gripe. It's a business model, right? Like at the end of the day, it's a business. So the other businesses are looking at it as a way to lower their cost, right? So if Boom says, okay, you know what, we really want to do these hardback volume Power Ranger books with these really cool slip covers, but we also don't know how many we're going to sell, right? Because it's a costly product. It's it costs us X, and it's going to cost X for the customer, and then if we print too many, we're going to be eating Power Ranger books for dinner, right? So what do? They go to Kickstarter, right? And they say, okay, we're going to run this Kickstarter, and they can base their numbers off of Kickstarter. They could say, okay, well, you know what, 100,000 people, you know what I'm saying? And this is just a made up number. I don't know what the Kickstarter did, but like, let's say, 10,000, 20,000 people back this book, right? So we're going to print another 40, 50 of them, right? So not only are we doing it for the Kickstarter backers, but now we're going to, so it lowers their cost, and they're making money. They're bringing it in immediately, right? So again, I'm not a businessman. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's neither here nor there for me. I think my only, like I mentioned, is they don't need it, right? They're already printing money.
I'll explain my position of what my concern is that I'm going to use WWE as a really good example. So WWE went out and hired Ronda Rousey, and she brought a lot of fame, a lot of attention to the product, and it was a real spike when she was around. Then she got injured, and then she basically sort of quit / put her contract on hiatus. And then all of a sudden, everybody involved sort of also left around her, and all these big power players left, and then there was a power vacuum in their women's division. And my concern is that not Boom Studios, because I don't think Boom with Power Rangers is the problem, but with Keanu Reeves and Scott Snyder and a lot of the big names, is that they come in and then all of a sudden they leave, and then there's this power vacuum, and then the funding rate and the projects on Kickstarter actually drop, which is what supposedly happened in 2021. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but from what I hear, that's sort of what happened. I could be completely wrong, but it's that idea that when they're on there, they benefit everybody, but then what happens when they leave? Because that's the real concern for me.
I mean, listen, since 2019, I funded 4 Kickstarters. 4 in a row, right? So 2020 was ridiculous. Like, I felt like everybody was funding. Everything was funding. This year, I've seen some people struggle. Even myself. Look, today, I'm not ashamed to admit it, $0 day. You know what I'm saying? I can't do anything about that. I also, sure as hell, I'm not going to blame Scott Snyder or Keanu Reeves for it. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, like, again, do they need it? No, but it's a barometer. It's a heat check, right? Instead of putting all your cookies in the oven all at one time, you do a little heat check, right? So they didn't know what Berserker would do, right? Although they should have, because it's Keanu Reeves and he's a gem, right? He's just a beautiful man, right? So at the end of the day, why wouldn't his book do well, right? Now, I've read Berserker. I don't think it's anything out of this world. It's a very basic story. I don't think it's anything brand new that we haven't seen. I think it's kind of like the old guard meets John Wick. You know what I'm saying? And is that cool sounding? Yeah, that sounds cool as hell. And is the book fun? Yeah, sure. But and I've said this for a while, if I put out Berserker, it would never do those numbers. Never, not even in a million years, right? Like, it doesn't matter how cool the story is. I'm just not going to do those numbers. So Keanu Reeves has the benefit of being Keanu Reeves. Scott Snyder, right? I could do Nocturna, same art team, same everything. I probably wouldn't do what Scott Snyder did, right? Because he's Scott Snyder, right? So their weight brings in the backers, but them leaving doesn't take the backers with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, so it's not like low tide, let's say they leave and everything just gets sucked in. No, like, there's plenty of backers. We as indie guys, man, we really got to stop pointing the finger at, like, the big shadows, right? Oh, the big two, and Marvel and DC and Image and blah, blah, blah. Work hard, dedicate yourself, sharpen your skills, hone your craft, do the things you need to do, create a quality product, and that will speak for itself. And I am a prime example of that. At the end of the day, I started off as an indie writer, and I said, okay, I created the agency. And then all of a sudden it turned into a publishing house. That publishing house went belly up. You know what I'm saying? I had my personal struggles and trials and tribulations in my life. And then I came back within Fairy. And then I came back with the agency. And now I'm here with the Illusion Witch. And 2 issues in and 2 successful Kickstarters later, I'm picked up. Oh, I almost said it. You almost got me. I'm picked up, right? So now, and that's not the end of my worries. That's not like, oh, I made it. Boom, I'm in the big league now. No, now is my time to really dig my heels in and push forward. And that was one of my first questions: is can I continue to do Kickstarters? And they say yes. Get your money. Do the things you need to do. So again, I'm not. I don't think of it as a big deal. I just think of it like they don't really need it, but it's a smart way of, like I said, gauging.
Fair enough.
And I think as if I could ever be at a Scott Snyder level, and I had an idea that I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know how people are going to respond to this, and I had a fan base that responds to me, sure, I'd probably use Kickstarter too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then obviously I want to jump into another topic, and that's conventions and all that stuff, because obviously we're turning the corner on COVID. Hopefully we're turning the corner on COVID. I think, people are sort of getting, everybody who wanted to get vaccinated, things are opening up, restrictions are getting lighter, and I think people are, moving forward, and it's going to be very interesting what happens with, jobs and everybody sort of starting to come back, or maybe not coming back, but obviously, I think that's what's going on, and cons are sort of slated for the summer for the most part. So how do you feel about where it's all going, and where are you at this, or are you just treating 2021 as a wash year and saying, hey, I'm waiting till the dust settles?
Right. No, I'm fully vaccinated. I've got a con at the end of July. I'm going to be at Tampa Bay Comic Con, and I'm going to go as a not a guest, like as a fan, maybe is a better word. I'm going to go to MegaCon as a fan. I miss it, man. I miss it. I miss that world. I miss that life. I miss being behind that table. And I'm not even really one to be behind the table. I'm usually out in front, trying to talk to people, so on and so forth. So, listen, like you said, those who wanted to be vaccinated are vaccinated. Those who are not are not. I am going to have my bottle of Purell. I'm going to have my little mask. So when I'm walking through the convention, but if I'm sitting at my table and somebody's standing, a table distance apart from me, and I got to talk to them over a huge crowd, having a mask on is probably not going to be the smartest thing for me to do, especially if I want to pitch my book well. So, like I said, I'll probably have one on as I walk through the con, but once I get to my table, I'll be good. I'll take it off, and I'm fully vaccinated. No mutant powers or weird happening to me just yet. I mean, I am hoping for teleportation, but who knows? Who knows? And yeah, man, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm all for it. I'm ready to dive back in. I wish I could have done more cons, but I've got, some family things going on towards the end of the year. And I really kind of wanted to gauge Tampa Bay Comic Con as like a heat check and see, okay, how do I, how's the con circuit? Are people coming back? Is it going to be dead? Are people coming with money? So on and so forth. So we'll see.
I mean, I think I'm going to a con in September, and it's just that, it's just one of those things where, I'm new to Connecticut, and I just obviously moved back in January, so I'm unfamiliar on my end. I'm fully vaccinated, and also I'm sort of counting 2021 as a wash, and I'm expecting 2022 to be more of an aggressive year, just because I think, things are coming back, but I think that any big major thing at a con, or like the good shit, is going to come out swinging in 2022, and I'd rather spend $2,000 at a con.
MegaCon is coming out swinging. I don't know if you've seen their lineup just yet, but they've got some great guests coming through, some great comic book artists and writers. So I think right now, it's just one of those things where it could be a wash in certain areas, but in other places, you got to watch out, man, because some of these later cons in the year, they're really going to try to pull out all the stops. If New York Comic Con is happening this year, you better believe that it's going to be amazing. It's going to be probably one of the best in years.
Well, we'll see what happens with where I'm at, because there's a lot of stuff going on behind my scenes in my business. And
right.
The New York Comic Con might not be the best economical move. for me.
It's an expensive con, man. Trust me, I did it 2 years in a row. It'll suck the life out of you, but it's
Where I'm going, things are about to get very interesting in my world. So I don't know if being at a convention, dropping $1,500 in an instant is the greatest move on the table.
right.
Also, the Java Center is a rough place.
Yeah. Oh, I do love that convention center though. I really do.
I
It's one of
hate that convention center. I hate that convention center. But you know what is? It's a rough and it is an aggressive con for me.
right. Oh
It,
no. Well, I mean, you're in New York City, Daddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you expect? It's it's gonna be very New Yorkerish. So it's definitely fast paced. When I was there, it was like a whirlwind, man. It was like a whirlwind. I remember coming home, after that weekend and just laying in my bed and just like feeling like my whole body was like shaking, like was like vibrating because of like it just didn't stop. It didn't stop. So but it's a great con. It's a great con. And like I said, I can't wait to get back to cons. I'm very much looking forward to my hometown con and being able to table there. I'm happy I'm able to do it at Tampa Bay Comic Con, and that is my first con back. And yeah, I look forward to next year because hopefully the publishing company that I'm with is going to be able to make some noise in the con circuit, and I would love to be able to be at their booths and their tables, and I would love to go out there and represent them. I'm very happy and excited about this company, so about this publishing company. So I can't wait to just experience all of it for the first time again.
and so obviously we've been talking for a while, and I don't want to push any further because I can get you to spill in so many ways, but. Obviously, I want to give you an opportunity to self-promote. So where can people find you on Facebook, Twitter, obviously back in the Kickstarter,
Yeah.
Instagram's a big one, and a variety of other things because I know you have a bunch of other stuff going on.
Come check out my Instagram. I work really hard on my Instagram layouts. So so come give me a follow on Instagram. It's Ruben the Writer, RUBEN the Writer. You can find me at that same handle on Twitter, where I scream at Ron DeSantis since Trump is gone. And I also share a lot of comic book stuff and things like that. But yeah, I love Twitter. A lot of people don't, but I do. And on Facebook, you can find me at Ruben Romero. I have a writer page under that name, and you can friend request me. I definitely not at my limit. I will say though, if you are a Nigerian prince who is trying to get me to click a link to get a free $30,000, do not friend request me. I'm so tired of this. So, but other than that, yeah, you can find me in all those places. And as well, right now on Kickstarter live, as of tomorrow, 8:30 a.m., 7 days to go, official week. You can search The Illusion Witch Book 1 and 2, as well as Andrew's going to have some links up top or down bottom that'll lead you there. So please.
Except on Twitch, because I don't know how to use Twitch.
Except on Twitch. I'm not on Twitch either, man. I don't know. My brother was like, oh, maybe you should start a TikTok. And I'm like, man, then I gotta learn the platform. So it's definitely something I want to incorporate, but probably as we get into these conventions.
TikTok is easier than Twitch. Twitch is the hardest thing for comics. Right. It is the hardest thing for comics. Everybody that I speak to in the comic world has a problem with Twitch. Yeah. It is not meant for comics. YouTube's meant for comics. Facebook's meant for comics. Instagram's meant for comics. TikTok's meant for comics. Twitch is not.
Right. Yeah, to me, Twitch is always like, for me, from what I understand, it's a streaming platform. To me, I think that makes the most sense for like cosplayers and video gamers. Like those two, like they kind of, it works well with the stream. Why? Because number one, if you're a cosplayer, people want to see how you build. They want to see how you take photos. They want to see how that magic is created, right? And then as far as a gamer, people want to learn. People want to pick up tricks and trades and learn shortcuts and things like that. So again, I think that you have to be smart about your platforms, and I see a lot of people going towards TikTok, but for me, it's like, I can't remember who it was, but it was like somebody was like giving writing advice, in this condensed TikTok video. And it's like, he's like, remember, you always got to do this. And remember, you got to do that. And it's like, you got to do everything so fast because you have this certain amount of real estate to work with, right? So not only does the video have to be captivating, but you have to be clear in what you're saying. Then you can add text, and you can, there's so much going on that for me, it's just like sensory overload. It's like that scene in Ready Player One where Sorrento's talking about renting out, like, the screen without inducing, a certain amount of the screen without inducing a seizure. Like, I don't even have TikTok downloaded because it's just so much, right? So, but again, something I might incorporate when we get into the cons, and I can sit down and kind of like learn the platform and see how it works to my advantage. I'm not an old man by no means, so I definitely want to be hip, so to speak, and be where the people are at. I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk a lot in reference to always being in the know. And knowing platforms and using them to your advantage. So it's definitely something that I'm going to add to my repertoire. I'm just not there yet. For now, I'll leave that to Danny Quick and his Ace Blade and villain season universe that he's got going on. He does a lot of great TikTok videos, but he's really like one of the only Kickstarter guys, or not Kickstarter, indie comic guys that I know that really is posting a lot of TikTok stuff. I know a couple other guys have joked about it, but I haven't seen too many, videos and things like that from them. But yeah, not on TikTok, but on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on Kickstarter right now.
And so on that note, and I've been saying it forever now, and I'm going to keep saying it, is you have to promote and support indie. And that means what you should be doing is obviously backing Kickstarters, first and foremost, if you can afford it. Also, if there is a writer you like and they have 5 series, and they're the series that is on their Kickstarter you're not liking, but you don't have one of their books in that series, I'm sure that they have a shop. I'm sure that some of these people have extras. I don't know what your inventory looks like, but obviously a bunch of people, you could probably DM them in some format and you might be able to get some stuff up, and that's another way how to support. So obviously you have to figure out how to, not figure out, you have to do it. You have to support. That means you have to buy people's books. And I'm going to say this, I don't personally care, and I don't know if you care, but if somebody says, hey, I'm a digital reader and I just want to back digitally, and that's your pledge, that's perfectly fine, because guess what? People live internationally, and I'm sure, it's like $30 to ship to the UK. And
it's expensive. So at the end of the day, yes, share, like it, back it digitally if you can. And if not, try to catch it on the next one. I tell people all the time, like every time somebody cancels a pledge, I always say that I always send them a message. Hey, I'm sorry to see you go. I hope to see you on the next one. So because I know, financially speaking, sometimes these things happen. So, it is what it is. And
then even going further, because obviously you just mentioned something, and if you are in that situation where you can't back something, one of the things that I always say, and that I'm encouraging, and even for this show, is that what I appreciate even more than a back or buy me a coffee, obviously my link's up there, and then supporting indie is important across every platform right now. But what I always say is that I appreciate when somebody shares this. It means so much more when somebody actually shares what I'm doing or shares a Kickstarter, because you don't know, and it's actually happened on this show with Corey Hardiman and Lori Foster, where she had a book and I was interviewing her, and because I shared it live, actually she got a bunch of backers who were watching. And that's how crazy, and it happened in real time, which is insane. And so you don't know who's watching, when they're watching, why they're watching. And it can make a huge difference that if I just throw out somebody's Kickstarter and then all of a sudden, somebody's like, oh man, this looks awesome, let me pick it up. And that can go a long way, and you never know. And it might seem just like a very simple, non-important, it might seem trite in a lot of ways. And all of a sudden, there's 10 people who could back a Kickstarter, and that goes so far. And it actually makes a difference. So obviously, if you're in a rough situation economically, and you're taking care of yourself financially, sharing things makes a huge difference. And it goes such a long way.
That it does.
And so on that note, obviously, I'm going to give you the final word.
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on. That's 5. Like I said, I'm going to be the Michael Jordan of the podcast. We're going to do 6. because you're gonna have to interview me after I make the announcement. You know, you're gonna want to know all about the details and all that good stuff on how it happened, and it's a fun story. So you'll have to have me on, and then me and Casey, you know, we got things going on, so you're gonna have to have both of us on. But yeah, man, I appreciate you and everything that you do for the indie comic book world, and in general, and thank you for being a good friend and always, you know, checking in on me. It means the world to me, and thank you for actually, you know, doing what you say you know tell people to do, which is support, you know, and you've backed both the Illusion Witch project so far. So again, your support means the world to me, brother.
Like my last $20 for like June.
Hey, bro, you know what? It's humbly appreciated, and I thank you for that. So yeah, and to everybody watching, you know, thank you for listening to us ramble about our projects and the things that we love to do, which is indie comics. And have a good night.
And that's a wrap. I couldn't have said it any better myself.